Okay, so now I've gone over some of the basic stuff. Let's actually get started with more of the traditional lab component of this chapter that we're doing. So I'm looking at page 9 at the very bottom, kind of that last bullet point. It says to access data you'll be using in this module in the catalog pane, expand the folders item. So if you recall, this catalog pane is over on the right, and you can access it by making sure that that tab at the bottom is open on catalog. So if you look up, you'll see second to last is a little option called folders. Click the arrow next to it, and you'll see that module that we created, and you can actually see the location within your hard drive of where it's located. So if you click on that again, you'll see it has several different items in it, and he tells you about those in the book. Just wanted to point out this module, see where it says Module 1 Geodatabase, we created that when we created the file. But up above it, where it says Mahoning County Geodatabase, which is what GDB stands for, this is for the data that we downloaded. So I don't know if you recall, but when we opened that up, when I was showing you around in Windows Explorer, that geodatabase file looks like a bunch of gobbledygook files. This is actually what it looks like. Neat and tidy. It's just a few layers. So it looks a lot different when you're looking at it within Arc Pro. Something else I wanted to point out, he points it out in the book, but it also ties into the lecture I did for this first chapter, where I talked about the different kinds of data we use in GIS, being raster and vector data. This here is that vector data. This is the points, lines, and polygons. So you can see we have literally a square that has little points in it, and these are point files. This little square has a line on it, and that's a line file. And the boundary has those little kind of cookie cutter shapes, and that's called a polygon file. Okay, moving on, I'm now looking at page 13, step 1.2. He's orienting this section. He's looking and orienting you to the map section of Arc Pro, and just sort of indicating that you can create new maps and add new maps here and work on multiple maps within a project. So the first thing we want to do is actually look at some of the properties of this map. So to look at the properties of this map and to look at the property of any layer you have in your contents, you highlight it by clicking once, right-click it, and you get this nice little user interface, and you can look at your properties. Okay? So here he wants you to look at how you can look at the units, and that's under General. Display units, it'll show you what it's in, and then you can change it, and it'll do the math for you and show you on the screen if you choose to use feet versus degree decimal minutes versus decimal degrees, etc. And a lot of other stuff going on here that we'll probably get into in later chapters. Okay, now I'm going to skip on ahead to step 1.3 on page 15. It's about adding data. I think his instructions are pretty clear here, but I wanted to just show you in case you find it difficult to find where it is. If you go to, what does he say? To begin, on the map tab on the ribbon within the layer group, click the add data button. Okay, map tab, layer. See, I have my screen a little smaller than usual, so everything's a bit squished. Here's the layer group. You see that little icon there with the plus? This is how you can add data. When you click on that, it's going to take you to the geodatabase we're currently working out of. So that's also the same thing you see here on the right in catalog. So you can add data by clicking on one of the layers, and you click OK. And it brings it over onto the left here. Now the other way you can do it is actually just by going to your catalog here on the right and literally dragging over to the table of contents. So you can see here I've added airports and boundaries. One of the things that happens when you put a layer onto your map like this is it pulls it into the extent of the map that's set. The extent being like what you have, it's kind of like a bookmark where you want the data to be seen from what level. Okay, I'm just going to go through kind of a little summary of what he goes through in more detail in the chapter, which I want you to read in detail, but I'll just show you again. I showed you the two different ways to add data to your map. I'm just going to go ahead and do it all by moving it over. I find this is way easier. Of course, there are times when this doesn't work for you. If your data is somewhere else entirely, you might want to do the add data button that I showed you. Otherwise, just to show you really quick, you can see as I pulled everything over, it pulls it over and opens it up. So it shows you all the different kinds of information that are contained within that layer. So to tidy things up, you can just close everything. Now, it just means that it looks more organized over here, but if you click those arrows again, you can see what's in each layer and how it's symbolized. And one thing to note about this is that we're currently in a mapping style called list by drawing order. That means that these are literally being drawn on top of each other in this order. So for instance, let's see, boundary actually should be at the bottom, because boundary is this kind of mint colored polygon at the back, and it's blocking the structures because the structures is just beneath it in this drawing order. So in order to move it, you literally just hold the mouse button down, and then you move it to that. See, that line activates and it moves it down. And now everything that's above it in this order is on top of it as we see it drawn on this map. And that applies to everything. So you can see those roads are kind of blocking out all the other information. Let's put the roads at the very bottom, or I'm sorry, not the very bottom, but just above boundaries, and you can see a lot of information pops out from that it was hiding. Okay, now I'm skipping ahead to page 19. I am looking at the first bullet point that continues in the main body of the lab. I just want to briefly show you what he's talking about here, how to access the projection for each layer that we're looking at. So much like we did with the map, we're just going to highlight one of the layers, right-click it, and look at properties, which is all the way down at the bottom of this menu that popped up. And if you click on source, which is the third one down, you can see, as you scroll down, under spatial reference, oh, this one has an unknown coordinate system. Whoops, I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm spoiling the fun of the lab here coming up. Let's go to roads and properties and look at that spatial reference. Okay, so you can see here we have a projected coordinate system listed as NAD 83, and its projection is transverse Mercator, and it's based on the geographic coordinate system of NAD 83, and the datum is the North American datum from 1983. There's more information in the book on all of these things, projections and geographic coordinate systems and projected coordinate systems. So if you're not in GIST, I recommend reading this part and maybe looking up a little bit more about it. If you're in GIST, we'll actually go into that in much more detail next week so you can understand what's going on here. So just from this point, you are going to be identifying the projections of each of these layers and kind of troubleshooting them a little bit. Just to move forward to, again, just show you a little bit about how to find stuff in case it gets confusing. Moving on to page 21, you're going to be running some geoprocessing tools. And in order to do that, it's very easy. Under this catalog project pane, there's something called toolboxes. Now toolboxes are, oh no, that's not what we want actually. I'm lying. You actually go to Analysis, and under Analysis, the Analysis tab, there's a Geoprocessing group, and there's an icon for tools, and that's going to open up a new pane over here over Catalog. So if you click on, currently it opens up by default under Favorites. If you click on Toolboxes, you'll see we have many, many, many tools. And if you were to click on each of these, you would see that there's subfolders within subfolders within subfolders of different tools. And what these tools are doing, these are called geoprocessing tools. they're running certain kinds of Python script that run certain calculations based upon what your objective is to analyze. And we can write our own tools, but there's all these preset tools that already exist. And in this case, you're going to be doing a projection tool. So I wanted to quickly go over some of the basic ideas that go into running geoprocessing tools. So we want to go into data management, and then we're going to go into projections and transformations. Scroll down a little bit here. Projections and transformations. And we're going to do project. So you can see you're finally at the tool when it's just the hammer. So you click on it, and now it opens up the tools. So the parameters are basically the data that you're putting in to run the tool. So where it says input data set or feature class, you are talking about the information that you're using to run the tool, or basically what you want the calculations to be based upon. Okay. In this case, you want it to be airports. So when you click it, it's going to automatically, by default, just list the only data sets that you can choose from in this currently active map. So in this case, we're supposed to choose airports. And now output data set, that is actually, as it sounds, like going to be what is created as a result of running these calculations and tools on the data in the airport file. And when it's done processing it, it's going to create a brand new layer. So that's why it's called an output data set. And by default, the computer or ArcPro creates a location and a title that is basically the name of the file as it was, underscore the title of the tool that you just used. And you can rename all of this, but this is just how it works by default. And under output coordinate system, you have to choose for this particular one. So there are two ways you can do this. You can go through and select it, as he does here, and you should do this so you understand how this all works. But you can also use, if you know that one of these has the correct output or a coordinate system on it, such as the boundary file, you can select that and it automatically picks it up and fills it in for you. So that's a nice little tool to know about. And just quickly here, I'm going to go ahead and hit run down here. So when you've put in all your parameters, you hit the run button. And it shows you it was successfully completed. You can look at the details. If anything had gone wrong, you could see why or what had happened. And you can see it put the new layer over here. So one thing I want to point out at this point is that this is the new data, the layer that we want to work with now. And they go over this a little bit further in the instructions, but they don't kind of elucidate exactly what's going on here. Because you have this new layer, you can actually get rid of that old layer. So we see down here we have airports. I'm just going to right click on it and hit remove. When you do that on the contents, it does not erase it from your actual data contained in the catalog. So just know that anytime you remove something from over here, this is just your active workspace. In contents on catalog, this is where you actually save stuff, where the stuff is recorded, so to speak. So you've got a lot of flexibility here. You can take stuff and add stuff kind of quite frequently as long as it's saved over in your catalog, which usually it always is. So to kind of wrap this up, again, I'm kind of skipping over a lot of the details that he goes over just because there's no point in me doing that. I'm mostly doing this just to kind of orient you with all the different ways to click around and find stuff. I'm skipping over to page 25, step 1.7, changing the appearance of a layer. So basically, I'm not going to go through everything here because he has you kind of run through a few different iterative steps just so you learn how to change symbology, which is very important. But I just want to point out some of the quick ways you can do this. So if you right click on any layer, let's do water. Again, you're always going to get this little pop-up here. And we want to look at symbology. So kind of run over here. Oh, there's a symbology. So we click on symbology, and as usual, it's going to create a new tab over here. Actually, I think the tab was already open. But by clicking on the symbology option through the layer, it activates that layer under here. So you can see this is where we're going to start working with how this layer looks. So under this, we're looking at water. The water is just as you are, just so you know that everything comes as a default. Nothing is permanent, and everything is like a random color assigned every time you open it in ArcPro and in ArcMap. So the symbol for water is yellow, which is not great. So if you click on that yellow box next to symbol, or just that box, it could be any color, it's going to take you to format the polygon symbol. And you'll notice that up at the top there's two options. There's the gallery and there's properties. So the gallery uses pre-designated colors. And this can be useful for other kinds of symbols, but for this, we're just going to go to properties. We're going to change the color. We're going to make it bright blue. And we can do an outline if you want. Let's do an outline of pink, because why not? And you click, and whenever you do this, you always have to hit apply. And it'll show up. So I realized as I was doing this that it wasn't showing up. And it's because water is one of the areas that you're supposed to change the projection on, or add a projection. So let me do that really quick here. So you'll see this under Tools, Geoprocessing. We're going to do Define Projection. The input data set is area water, and the coordinate system is we're going to match it to the boundary. We're going to hit Run, and there we go. So as I had done before, I'd done blue water, pink boundary. And then just to show you, so you know, we're going to go to Structures, and it's a little different from the area water because that was just a straight polygon that didn't have a lot of different breakdowns within the data or its attributes. But Structures is different. It has a lot of unique values. So that's how we're going to do the symbology and how it's displayed. So you have all these different kinds of buildings. And in the directions, I didn't think this was very clear within the lab, but in order to format that symbol, you actually have to click on the symbol down here in this little section. And then you're going to get to that gallery/properties format symbol, and you can change things within there. And if you want to sort of find the kind of symbol that it goes with, you type in, say, education or hospital or whatever in the search, and it'll come up with the symbols that are assigned to that word or that keyword. And just as an aside, you can always hit these back and forth buttons to navigate throughout these areas. Okay, so that's it for now. I know this was kind of maybe a lot to take in. It felt like a lot to explain, even though we actually didn't do too much. But again, I think you can appreciate the complexity, but also the kind of amazing things you can start to do in GIS. And I look forward to seeing how this lab goes for you guys and to getting into more and more complex geospatial analysis as these weeks go on. So thanks very much, and good luck with the lab.